Hey guys, my name is Gabriella. Kind of gone back and forth on whether or not I wanted to start this channel and make this video, but I thought, if I can give support and encouragement to other brand new moms and other women, then I want to do it. Like if I can make a difference in somebody's life, then maybe I want to do it. So I decided to create this channel, kind of like a beauty, lifestyle, motherhood kind of channel where we can kind of have this judgment-free zone to kind of talk about all of the struggles that we have as new moms and really make it to be a place where it's judgment-free. So I thought I'd do like a kind of like a get ready with me story time, kind of my birth story, kind of where it all began. Is 7 months old now, like 7 months and 3 days. So I am a little bit removed of it, but still really fresh in my mind. All of the struggles and fears that I kind of went through as a brand new mom and somebody who's really never been hospitalized for anything before. Like I had never even broken a bone. I had never had a tooth pulled. Like I had never had anything done. So I went in to give birth to my daughter. It was the first time I'd ever stayed in a hospital as a patient, and it was terrifying. I thought I'd talk about that, like my experience with it, kind of the things that happened, things that kind of went wrong. We did end up having to stay another day in the hospital with a few things, so we'll talk about that. But I'm gonna get ready at the same time. I did have my It's a Girl mug that my sister brought to me while I was in the hospital. I'll kind of go through like what I'm using and we'll get started. So I'm going to start out with a facial oil. This is the All Bright with Hibiscus Botanics facial oil. Getting into my birth story, my pregnancy really went really well. I never really had complications. I didn't start to really feel bad until the very end. I was nauseous throughout my first trimester, but I still worked full-time, 24-hour shifts as an EMT, and I really didn't have any problems with it until I got like right up into like 34 weeks and forward. I ended up working until I was 38 weeks, and I gave birth at 39 weeks exactly. So I had a week off before Peanut decided to come. And a little bit about how I was carrying. My doctor told me I was carrying very low. My hips were very painful. And I highly recommend, if you're also having pain with carrying your baby, to go see a physical therapist. That's what my doctor recommended that I do. And she did dry needling and like a massage. And we started out with the massage because dry needling freaked me out, I'm not gonna lie. But the massages really helped and it was really great. And then when it got really unbearable is when we started the dry needling, and oh my gosh, game changer. I had the best physical therapist. She was so great, and I'm so glad I had the best doctor who recommended me to that physical therapist. And I didn't start out with that doctor. My doctor, when I was very early on, ended up moving. And so I had to go to a new doctor, and I was so salty about it, and I didn't want to do it. And then I ended up absolutely falling in love with my doctor. So if you do have to switch doctors, it's not the end of the world. I found out that I was pregnant like pretty much as soon as you can. This is the Daily Hydration Elf Moisturizer. I really like it because it's like super thick and hydrating, and I have pretty dry skin. So this is really nice. It does have pretty intense smell to it, so if that bothers you, you probably would hate this. But this is what it looks like. I found out because I was nauseous, and then I realized I was late. And while I was nauseous, I was also craving Chinese food. So I was getting ready to puke, but also I wanted Chinese food. So I told my husband, I was like, you got to go get Chinese food and a pregnancy test. And he did. And we found out we were pregnant. And I thought that I would just immediately be overjoyed because I've always wanted a child. But in that moment, I was just so scared because what a huge life change. But in that moment, I was terrified. I still wanted to be a mom. I still wanted to have my daughter, but I just started bawling because I was like, am I cut out for this? Can I do this right? Like, am I going to mess it up? Etc. It's terrifying. I think my husband was terrified too. But we turned out to be fairly good parents, I think. Okay, so fast forward. I'm 39 weeks pregnant. I went in for my 39-week checkup because it was the day before, or yeah, I went in for my 39-week checkup. It was the day before I was officially 39 weeks. And I told my doctor, like, I'm just so ready to be done carrying this baby. Like, I just want to hold her in my hands. I want to look in her face. I just want to hold her. I want to love her. I'm ready. And she goes, it could be any day. Like, it's soon. She's super low. Was dilated to like a 2, maybe a 3, which you can be dilated that far forever. I forget I'm doing 2 things at once. So I'm going to use this BB cream. It is the Misha BB cream. This is the shade number 13. It's called Milky Beige. And then I use the L'Oreal sponge to blend it out. You can also use your fingers, and if I'm like in a hurry or I want a day with a little bit fuller coverage, then I'll do that. Typically don't like super full coverage foundations, which is why I wear BB cream most of the time. And I love this stuff. It's really good with my skin. It's helped my breakouts tremendously. I just feel my skin feels good with this on. Like, it's doing something good for my skin. It does has an SPF of 42 as well, so that's kind of nice. After I got out of that appointment, my husband went back to work. He did go to the appointment with me, and I decided I was going to walk and walk and walk. And I live in Wyoming, so the weather was super terrible. So I ended up going to like Kmart and walking around Kmart, and then I went to Walmart and walked around Walmart, and then I went to Albertsons and just walked around Albertsons a ton. I ended up buying a ton of stuff I didn't need, but I walked so much. And then I called my mom and I said, Mom, let's go out to eat, because this is the last chance we're gonna get to go out to eat before the baby comes. So let's just go, because I knew I was gonna go into labor the next day. Somehow, I don't know how, but I knew that I was gonna go into labor. I ended up going out to eat with my parents. We went to like a hibachi grill, and it was awesome and fun. And that night I crawled into bed, went to bed. 3 o'clock the next morning, I started to have a contraction, just like a Braxton Hicks contraction. They happen. Went pee, had a contraction, laid in bed, contraction stopped, got ready to go back to bed. And then all of a sudden I felt the smallest little gush. And I woke up my husband and I said, honey, I'm not sure if I peed myself or if my water broke. And I got up and I went back to the bathroom, and it wasn't even enough. This is too much information, but it wasn't even enough to get my underwear damp. Like, it was just the tiniest gush. So I was like, I don't know what to do. And so my husband was like, well, we better go get checked out just in case. So we went to the ER, and I told the lady that was checking me in at the ER, I was like, I don't know. Like, I may have just peed myself. I'm not sure. And she was like, you know what? Even if you did pee yourself, she's like, it happens all of the time. So if you're embarrassed and don't want to get checked out because you're worried that you peed yourself and you're not sure if your water broke, apparently it happens all the time. So don't be embarrassed. Don't be worried about it. They see it all the time. But I stood up from the chair of the check-in desk because I had to check in through the ER because it was so early in the morning. And someone finally came down to get me from OB, and I stood up, and a giant gush. And I like looked at my husband and I was like, honey, does it look like I peed my pants? And I did put a pad on, like a period pad on before we left the house. And he goes, no, it doesn't. And I like leaned over to look myself, like over my giant pregnant belly. And I didn't see anything, but I had another big gush. So I got up there, we got all checked in. They put the monitors on me and everything. And the nurse came in and she was like, we're going to do this test. And it's just a strip, and I'm going to touch it to the wetness, and if it turns blue, it means it's amniotic fluid. If it doesn't, we're gonna have to do a more expensive test to find out if your water actually broke. And I was like, okay, sounds good. She gets the test strip. I don't even think she really got it that close to me, and the thing turned blue. And she was like, yeah, your water has definitely broke. And I was like, okay. And she was like, well, do you want to start the Pitocin now, or do you want to just wait and see if it kind of progresses on its own? And I had heard that Pitocin contractions hurt so bad, so I was like, let's just see how it goes. And she was like, well, do you know if you're gonna want an epidural? And I was like, having a needle in my spine sounds totally terrifying, so let's just see how it goes. So I kind of went in there with a plan of not having a plan. Like, my whole birth plan, you know, like people have these like incredibly elaborate birth plans. My birth plan was get the baby out and hope it happens without complications. Like, just go with the flow. But then my doctor came in and she said, I know you don't want to start the Pitocin, but if you go over 14 hours, we're going to have to do a C-section because your baby's at a higher risk of you getting an infection that could harm the baby. So at 14 hours, we're slicing you open if you don't progress. And so far, you're not really progressing. So I made the decision to start the Pitocin, and holy moly, it hurt so freaking bad. I was like, give me the epidural. I don't care about needles. I don't care about anything. Just give me the epidural. So they had to call in because it was, again, 3 o'clock in the morning. They had to call in the anesthesiologist to do the epidural. And once I got the epidural, I was feeling pretty great. As my labor progressed, obviously I had the epidural, so I couldn't really get out of bed or anything. When they gave me the epidural, I lost completely all feeling in my legs, which I was told that you are actually supposed to feel your legs, or you're supposed to be able to move your legs still. I could not move my legs. I had total no feeling in my legs, and my nurse said, okay, that's kind of normal. She was like, we'll see how it goes. I'm going to be using the L'Oreal concealer. This is the shade 330 Ivory. And a tiny bit goes a long way with this. And I kind of just blend this out with my finger, and then I use the sponge to kind of like disperse it a little bit better. My nurse asked me how I was feeling a little bit later, and I was like, well, my arms are starting to go a little bit numb. And she was like, that sometimes can happen. She was like, just keep me updated. Let me know how things are going. And then finally I told her, I was like, my eyebrows are starting, like I could feel it in my eyebrows. I was like, my eyebrows are starting to get numb. And she goes, okay, we're going to call the anesthesiologist back. So they called the anesthesiologist back, and then right after they paged the anesthesiologist, my blood pressure dropped. It dropped first to 60/40, and the lowest it was 40/20. So that was very frightening. My mom just started bawling. I felt totally calm, cool. I was like, it's all right. I feel great. It's fine. The baby wasn't showing any signs of distress at this time, which was good. The anesthesiologist came in. They gave me medication to increase my blood pressure, and they turned off the epidural. And they said, once you get all complete feeling back and you're in pain again, we will turn the epidural back on, but we're only going to turn it up to a 6, and it can go all the way to a 12. I got feeling back. Everything was fine. At one point, when I could not feel my legs at all, my leg fell off the table, and I really thought that I was going to go off the table with it. And so I freaked out. I was like, catch me! I'm going over! Because I could not move. I had completely lost total feeling in my legs. Couldn't move them at all. Thankfully, somebody put my leg back on the table. So eventually, after I could feel things again, it was very painful. I couldn't have the epidural all the way up, but you just manage through it, you just get through it. And then I remember my doctor coming in, and she was like, it's time. And I was like so nervous, so scared, but so ready to see my baby. They came in, they held my legs up, I leaned forward, and on every contraction I pushed as hard as I could. I didn't notice that I pooped any, but I did ask my mom, who was on one side of me. My husband was on the other side. My best friend was behind me. And at one point my sister came in. I was like, Mom, did I poop? And she was like, yeah, but the nurse took it away right away. So I don't think anybody else noticed it, because I was kind of weirded out about that too. I'm sure most people, the stupid things that we worry about. Did I poop when I gave birth? You just pushed a human out of your body. You get to poop on a table. Anyway, so I'm just gonna set a little bit, just right here in the corner of my eyes, with a little bit of the Laura Mercier translucent powder here. The head started to come out, and she was like, she's coming out, and I got really excited. And then my doctors told me to stop pushing. My daughter had a nuchal cord, which means the cord was wrapped around her neck. And so my doctor very quickly clamped it and cut it, and then I pushed her the rest of the way out. She was very cyanotic or blue when she was born, and she had inhaled some of the amniotic fluid. So they had to like use this little suction cuppy thing to beat on her chest. And obviously I'm not a neonatal nurse, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not 100% on everything that they were doing and going through, but they took my daughter immediately, like they showed her to me, and then they took her over to this thing where they kind of beat on her chest with a suction cup. I think my husband took a little video of that, so I can insert that maybe.
My brother still doesn't even know. I just sent him a picture. He's like, what?
He didn't come back? They took her away. They took her to the NICU. So I'm going to do my eyebrows next, and I'm going to use this Brow Stylist Definer Ultra Fine Tip Shaping Pencil in Dark Brunette. It looks like this. It's from L'Oreal. And that I was devastated. One of my biggest fears throughout my pregnancy was that they were going to immediately just take her away from me. And then, you know, everybody tells you, oh, they're not. They're going to put her on your chest. You're going to have that skin to skin. You're going to have that bonding. It's going to be wonderful. And then they just take your baby. And you're already like crazy emotional, and it's so hard. And so I just started like bawling, like scream bawling, like toddler throwing tantrum while I'm sitting there. I had a 2nd-degree tear, and so she was stitching up my 2nd-degree tear, and I'm just bawling. They finally told me that as soon as they get a couple of blood pressures on me, that I could go to the NICU to see my baby. So I suffered through those few blood pressures, and then they put me in a wheelchair, and I got to go see my daughter. And it was the most magical moment of my life. I know how cheesy that sounds. I know how ridiculous it is, but it was so amazing. And I did not want to leave her. And the whole time I'm bawling. Finally, my mom was like, they're going to take really good care of her. Like, just go get some sleep. I went back to my room. I didn't feel like I was hungry, but my mom and my husband were like, you need to eat something. I started to eat, and I was starving because I hadn't eaten since like 3 o'clock that morning. I just started like shoveling it in my face. I was so hungry. And then I slept because that was the most worn out I have been in my entire life. As soon as I woke up, I went and saw my baby again. She was doing really well. Her oxygen saturation had come up. I did have her on oxygen for a while. The second day we were there, they weaned her off of the oxygen, and that was amazing. So I'd go wake up and go see her every couple of hours. I would pump when I wasn't with her to try to give her more of that colostrum and just see her. Like, I just wanted to be with her. And finally, that second day after they'd weaned her off of oxygen, they brought her to my room because I went to go try to breastfeed her, and they were like, we can't let you in here. There's too many critical babies. Like, we're just going to let her come to you. And then we'll take her, we'll go get her blood sugar tested, and then we'll see if we can leave her with you. So they brought her to me, and I fed her, and nobody came to get her for her blood glucose. So I just ended up getting to keep her. She a little bit kind of got lost in the shuffle of things. My nurse had no idea that she was going to be in my room with me. There was no handoff report given. They never came and got her. So finally I paged my nurse and I said, hey, they were going to take her to get her blood sugar tested. And she was like, okay, I'll figure this out. And I guess they had a shift change, and no one turned over the information on my child. So I gave her the best medical history that I could, and she read the chart, and she took my daughter as her patient too, and they let me keep her in the room. So that was really nice. At the end of the second day, we finally got to take our daughter home. I was so excited about that, but I was also so nervous. I was so worried about her with SIDS and just anything going wrong, any sort of complications. Like, I was so scared. So, and still highly emotional. There's something called the baby blues that they say that you can have for like 2 weeks after you give birth, where you're just super emotional. That was definitely me. Later, I would also find out that I have postpartum depression, which I'm going to do a completely separate video on my journey with postpartum depression. And so I get her home. I'm so nervous about her. I'm crying all of the time. I'm super emotional. I am breastfeeding. And like the second day we're at home, I'm using the bronzer from the number 7 bronzer in the shade Maple. Looks like that. Just using this to kind of blend that in a little bit better. Okay, the second day that we have her home, I kind of noticed that she's kind of lethargic, and just limp, and she's very jaundiced. They told us that since it was a weekend, we could come back in and have her bilirubin tested if we needed to, that we could also get her weighed, make sure she's gaining weight, or at least not losing weight. My husband and I decided to pack her up, go back to the OB floor, get her tested, and we found out that she had a really, really high bilirubin and that she had lost over a pound in the 2 days, or almost a pound in the 2 days. The nurse comes in and they say that they're going to admit her on the OB floor. They're going to keep her in what they call a billy bassinet. I have a picture of that. I'll insert it too. It's just kind of lights that help with the bilirubin. And I wasn't allowed to take her out of it. I wasn't allowed to hold her. I could only take her out to feed her. But also they recommended that I give her formula because the bilirubin can actually attach to the formula and get it out of their system faster. They did give me the option to use donor milk as well because my milk hadn't come in yet. I just decided that if the formula was going to help the bilirubin get through faster, then I was just going to use formula. So we did that. She got better. We went home, and I decided just to continue to give her the formula because I was worried about it happening again. So I'm going to use number 45 Sexy Flush. It's the infallible blush sticks. It looks like that. I just rub it on the back of my hand, and then I use this brush to like pick it up and then blot it on my face. And then I'm going to go in with this Hourglass highlighter, Vanish Stick Champagne Flash. Looks like this. And I just use my finger. So I think my biggest struggle once we were home was I was so afraid to just solely start breastfeeding her again. My doctor gave me the go-ahead, but I was so worried that we would be back, that she would start losing weight again, and I just had so much anxiety about it. And like I said, at this time, I was not now being treated for postpartum depression because I didn't want to admit that I had it. So I just decided that I was going to supplement with formula. So at this time I was formula feeding and breastfeeding. So I'm going to use this Urban Decay eyeshadow primer potion, the anti-aging one, on my eyelids. Got it in my eyebrow. Don't do that. We did have a home health nurse that came, and I highly recommend if you're pregnant or if you've just had a baby and they offer it in your community, it is so wonderful. I didn't want to sign up for it, but my doctor kept like recommending it and encouraging me to do it. They come and they like weigh your baby and they answer any questions you have and they make sure they're doing well. And I was like, you know what? I just had a baby. I don't want to have to make sure my house is spotless every time that this lady comes over. Like, I don't want to be judged. And it was totally not like that. My home health nurse, her name was Amber. It's put on by our public health. She came, she gave us a halo wrap and a little black and white book and some really good educational pamphlets, and she weighed her, and she was really helpful in making sure that Peanut was consistently growing. She's doing wonderful now. She's in like at least the 70th percentile for everything, height, weight, head circumference. Like, she's huge and amazing, and I definitely would not have gotten treated for my postpartum depression if it wasn't for both my pediatrician and my home health nurse. They were so wonderful and so supportive and so not judgmental. I ended up getting treated when Peanut was around 3 months old. I went to my doctor finally, and I told her that I was having a really difficult time. And so I got treated for that. I'm going to make a whole video on it because even as someone who kind of works in the healthcare field, I had so many misconceptions about postpartum depression. I just used the Sultry palette to set my primer potion. I use this fresh color. Now I'm going to use this Charlotte Tilbury, like, cream eyeshadow, and it's called Eyes to Mesmerize. It's in the shade Mona Lisa. I really love this shade, and I love the Marie Antoinette shade. And then I have Jean, which I really like as well. And I just kind of put this on with my finger. It's okay if it kind of looks crappy when you first put it on because it blends out so well. I have pretty oily eyelids, and so when I first tried this out, I hated it because it creased so bad. But then I started using the primer potion and setting it, and I have not had a single problem with it creasing at all. So that's kind of how I do that part of it. So I'm just going to blend this out with one of these Morphe brushes. I didn't say what brushes I was using on any of this, but oh well. This is just a clean brush that I'm just using to blend the edges of this. And then I'm going to go and take this shade Twig, and I'm going to put that into my crease and on the outer corner. As a new mom, the hardest part about being a new mom is always thinking that you're making the wrong decision because people are so judgmental. It doesn't matter whether you formula feed or you breastfeed or you have a natural birth or you have an epidural or you have a C-section, or like somebody's going to find some reason to judge you as a new mom. And I think my hardest part is realizing that as long as I listen to my doctor and what my doctor recommends, and I do what I think is in the best interest for my daughter, like I'm doing the right thing. I did end up at about 3 months solely switching to formula feeding. I was pumping constantly every 3 hours on the dot and breastfeeding. At the end of the day, I would have pumped like 2 to 3 ounces, and my daughter at that time was drinking 4 to 6 ounces every 3 hours. So I wasn't even pumping what she would eat in one sitting by the end of the day. So it was just, I was realizing it was just such a waste of time when I could spend that time reading her stories or giving her baths or doing tummy time. Like there were so many different things that I could be doing than spending all of that time to try to get her one feeding of breast milk. If I had another child, which I do want another child, my husband are trying to decide if we want to start trying right away or if maybe we want to wait a couple more months, but we do want another child. Within the next year, I think we'll start trying. I'm just going to use this brush and I'm going to take the shade Dystopian from that Anastasia Sultry palette, and I'm just going to put that on the outer corner of my eye and then blend it in with that big fluffy brush again. And if I had another child, I would try breastfeeding again. I think I learned from the mistakes that I made when trying to breastfeed Emma. I don't think that she's worse off for not having been breastfed. I think she's healthy. I think she's happy. She's big. She's strong. You can hear her in the background. She's just my whole world. I love her 2 pieces. Okay, so I'm going to take this eyeliner. It is in the shade. It's Illa Mascu coloring pencil. It's called an eye crayon. It doesn't say a shade. Oh wait, no it does. It's called Honor. And it's just a brown eyeliner pencil. I'm going to use that to line the bottom lash line. And I'm going to use the Kat Von D tattoo liner in Trooper Black and just line the lash line on both sides. Before I put my mascara on, I'm just going to spray my face with some Urban Decay All Nighter spray. I just thought this would be kind of a fun way to go through my birth story and kind of share this with you guys. Like I said, I want to do another video where I talk about my battle with postpartum depression and kind of the misconceptions that I had with it, because I thought that it would mean that I didn't bond with my child. Totally wrong. Totally bonded with her. Totally loved her. I think that was part of the reason why I was so not ready to get help, because I was like, well, I bonded with my child, so I must not have postpartum depression. No. Super bad misconceptions. I really enjoy this kind of video. I kind of enjoy chatting with you. I'm hoping that we can talk, chat, be non-judgmental, be supportive. We have enough people telling us that we're doing a bad job when we're doing the best job. I'm going to use the Lash Paradise primer base first. I will say too, when I was up in the hospital, a lot of my coworkers came up to see me, and it was the first time that I had ever taken narcotics or any type of medication like that, and I was so sleep deprived. I asked my boss what it meant to have a second-degree tear. How unprofessional is that? And pretty much everybody started laughing at me, and my boss was like, hey, leave her alone. For anybody that doesn't know, a first-degree tear and a second-degree tear means that the vagina has torn, but not quite to the perineum. A third-degree tear means that it's torn into the perineum, and the fourth-degree tear tears all the way into the anus. And hopefully if you tear that bad, they just decided to do an episiotomy before. I did not have to get an episiotomy done. That's when they just cut all the way to your anus. And I've heard that it has an easier time healing. I didn't have too bad of a recovery. I feel like I recovered fairly well, fairly quickly. So I'm just going to now use the Lash Paradise in black. It's the waterproof hydrofuge voluminous Lash Paradise. I feel like when you use this mascara, you do not need to even put lashes on. Like, it's just such a good mascara, especially with that primer. All right, guys, so this is the look. I share my birth story with you and my journey through motherhood with you. If you can hear my baby in the background, it's motherhood. Sorry. I really enjoyed this. I hope that we can create a community of people who just support and love each other, and a judgment-free zone where we can just talk like this and be open with each other and not be judged for the decisions we make as a mom, as long as it doesn't harm our child and benefits our child. So thank you very much. I'll see you next time.